Howdy, all. Well, we're embarking on the Labor Day weekend, which is sort of the unofficial end of summer. Also, players are being cut in the NFL, so that's sort of also a rite of passage for the end of summer. But
Although, when Hard Knocks is on, I never used to watch, right? I'm watching this year just because it's the Rams. It makes you feel bad. I don't want to feel bad about cuts, but whatever.
yeah, I know. It still feels weird that it's the L.A. Rams. I just got used to being the St. Louis Rams, and now it's the L.A. Rams again.
Hey, I'm Facebook friends with Vince Ferragamo. I was rooting for those Rams over the Steelers. Just didn't happen.
Please, that's one of many bad Buffalo Bills quarterbacks because he came to Buffalo after L.A.
Right. He was good in the Super Bowl for LA, though.
He was good in the Super Bowl, yeah. I mean, I think they probably gave that Steeler team the best run of any of their, during that four Super Bowl Bradshaw era. There weren't many, maybe that one Dallas team, but I think the Rams gave him the Ray Malavasi Rams gave him a pretty decent run for their money.
Yeah.
But no, being September 2nd, and Ty, we're live, just to let you know.
Hey.
Hey.
It being September 2nd, we're only 2 weeks away from rookie tournaments throughout the NHL. I'm going to the tournament in London, Ontario that features the Leafs, the Montreal Canadiens, Ottawa Senators, and Pittsburgh Penguins, so I'll get a chance to see. I won't see Matthews because Matthews will be at the World Cup, but I'll see Marner. I'll see Sergachev, the first-round pick from the Canadiens, and Logan Brown for the Ottawa Senators. Russ, you were mentioning about Traverse City.
Yeah, here's the teams that are going. It'll be the Red Wings, the Hurricanes, the Blackhawks, the Blue Jackets, the Stars, the Wild, the Rangers, and the Blues. And so, I was sort of looking over the rosters a bit, and so, I saw a couple names for, Minnesota. You've got Alex Tuck and Eriksson Ek. Those are two big names. I just saw Tuck a couple days ago, and he looks bigger, man. He's going to be a beast. Pierre-Luc Dubois will play on the Columbus team. I'm sure if we can get some streaming of that, that'll be worthy of watching. The Ranger team is interesting, and I like to go over the roster because while you have, Ty Ronning, Cliff Ronning's kid, and Sean Day, it'll certainly be interesting to watch them. Jimmy Vesey, I think that's a name will be there.
Yeah.
You've heard of that name? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I don't know who that is. That didn't dominate August.
Okay. So he'll be there. Pavel Buchnevich, which is an interesting name. We're going to get to see where his skill level's at. Will be there because he's expected to make the team this year. And then you go, Ryan Gropp is a guy who's probably a year away. And Robin Kovacs is a guy not a lot of Ranger fans know, but he's a Swedish kid with a lot of speed and a lot of skill. So it'll be interesting. Brandon Halverson will be their goalie. There's going to be a lot of fun guys to watch in that tournament.
Yeah. Now, Ty, are you making your way to Buffalo? Because I think it's still Boston, New Jersey, and Buffalo at the Harbor Center doing their rookie tournament.
Yeah, I drove through Buffalo last month, and I think I decided that I've done my drive to Buffalo for the year. So I won't be coming up for that one. One of those things that I think for the Bruins, there's a lot of names to watch. They were in this tournament last year with these teams. Obviously, the star of the tournament last year, or the focus of the tournament last year was Jack Eichel. But so this year it's a little bit different, I think, for all the teams involved. But still, for the Bruins, I think you want to focus on the growth of the defensemen. We know their forward group has a lot of talent, a lot of variety too. I think in terms of the overall skill sets and what guys can bring to the table. But you need to see that that defensive group take that next step. The problem is that the people I talk to and the people that they know the prospects, and Russ can chime in on this one as well, is that they say the Bruins have a nice system, a nice little group of prospects coming in. The problem is that they don't have anyone right now that's going to step in and bridge the gap between Chara and Tomorrow. And that's really what they lost with Dougie Hamilton, and they've never been able to replace, via free agency, via trade, whatever it may be. They haven't done it. And you really wonder if they can do it.
Yeah, the O'Gara's close, but since he doesn't have a tremendous amount of foot speed, he's probably going to have to increase that. So I don't think they want to mess with that. The guy who, if they rushed a little bit, could probably give him a small role might be Brandon Carlo. because he is used to covering elite players in junior hockey. He is a workout fanatic. He has gotten a lot faster. We'll see what he looks like in this camp, but he might be the only guy that I can think of that would have the chance.
Yeah, and this tournament, obviously, Alex Nylander for Buffalo. I mean, Pavel Zacha will probably be in it for New Jersey. He only played one NHL game last year, and he coming off a good season with Sarnia, and I know he played a few games in the AHL playoffs, but then got hurt or held out. I'm not sure. I just know he didn't play most of the series against the Marlies. And I'm sure, well, McAvoy won't be in it because McAvoy's to college, so he won't be involved in the rookie camp. But I mean,
He'll light it up. He will.
Yeah. So okay, let's get started. There's some news, interesting news happening. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Friday, September 2nd, 2016.
I'm Ty Anderson.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
I'm Michael Lagello, and this is the Hockeybuzzcast here on Hockeybuzz.com. Just to let everybody know, we will not be doing a show on Monday for Labor Day. We'll be back on Tuesday. We are getting closer to the World Cup of Hockey.
I just want to say I'm going to miss everybody while I'm sitting around my yard doing nothing, drinking beer. I'm really going to miss everybody. Just want to let people know.
So I'll be missing everybody burning wood from a old dresser that I took apart, for a relaxing wood fire in a fire pit in suburban Buffalo. But we have to start off with the panic going on right now in Leaf Nation, and
bring it on.
Well, yeah, I mean, and let's just say this:
I look upset too.
Yeah. We don't know the extent or even if there is an injury right now, but it was prominent this morning, and not too many people know that there is a Olympic qualifying tournament going on right now. Latvia, Belarus, Denmark are a few of the teams involved, and Frederik Andersen is the number one goaltender for Denmark. And in a game against Slovenia, that was one of the other teams, there was a collision late in the third period between a Danish defenseman and Anderson. And if you look at the video, which is embedded on my blog on HockeyBuzz, it doesn't look bad, but it doesn't look like he fell on his shoulder or his knee or there was any kind of contact. But apparently, as a precautionary measure, the Danish coach pulled Anderson from the game. And we know that the Leafs are not built to be a contender this year. It's basically one of these transitional years where they want to establish a winning formula. They want to just get through the season and have youngsters improve. But if Anderson gets hurt, Russ, this is going down the road of what happened with the Buffalo Sabres, where Robin Leonard got hurt in the first game and then it derailed their season in a way.
Yeah, this is not what the Leafs want. They definitely don't want this because, again, it's a situation where he's never suited up for the Leafs, right? And so this is where these kind of tournaments are tough. You don't want to stop hockey players from playing because playing makes them better, but you don't want them to get hurt either. So there's this fine line, and right now, sounds like there was enough to pull him out of the game, right? So there's something going on with him, and this might be if Lou reacts the same way to this as he did Nylander with the World Juniors, then he's going to pull Anderson out.
Yeah, Ty.
I mean, that would make sense. I think. I mean, you don't want. I think that's the concern a lot of GMs are going to have about this World Cup of Hockey thing. Given its placement in the year, the last thing some team wants is, the last thing Vancouver wants is one of the Sedins getting hurt. The last thing the Bruins want is Chara getting hurt for Team Europe, a team that is not even a real team. So it's one of those things, I think, where we're going to see GMs express concern about this tournament and the involvement in the Olympics if star players get hurt. And Anderson is a star player for the Maple Leafs right now. Behind him, it's Jonas Enroth. I mean, that's not exactly the most confident option you'd have as a starting goaltender. So I think that there's definitely concern if you're the Leafs. I mean, obviously, precautionary move. It's a precautionary move to take him out. It would appear that way if you look at the video. But still, you don't want this to be a lingering injury. If he has a bad start, if he starts out 2-8, 3-7, you're gonna start getting questions about that and whether or not he's playing through something.
Right, and it's just under 3 weeks until the Leafs open training camp in Nova Scotia. They've been supplanted from their practice facility because of the World Cup, so they'll be starting on the road and moving around.
Are you going to Nova Scotia, Mike?
No, I wish. I'd love to go to Nova Scotia, but no. But the thing is, and if you look at the Sabres situation as a comparative, they traded a first-round pick for Robin Lehner with Ottawa. He was the presumptive number one goaltender going into camp. He gets hurt, I believe it was in the opening game of the season. And for the first half of the season, it was basically Chad Johnson and Linus Ullmark. And Ullmark was not considered to be ready. Now, he showed a little something, and I think that's a reason for the Sabres to be encouraged. But ideally what they wanted to do was find out whether Lehner could be durable and dependable enough to be their number one goaltender. They didn't find that out until the second half of the season. He started to play well and then got hurt again. So there was a big question mark. There still is a lingering one with Lehner in Buffalo. With Anderson's never played over 54 games. He played 54 games 1 year with the Ducks, but pretty much in the time that he's been there, he has split time either with Hiller or with Gibson. So him being the number one guy and playing 55 to 60 games and playing, as Russ said, in that media market in Toronto, I think was one of the most important things for the Leafs to find out, whether he could handle it and what the end result was. Now, if he's injured, and we're assuming right now, if he's injured and that's delayed and Jonas Enroth has to start the beginning of the season, then really you're not learning anything. And Anderson and that knowledge of what if Anderson can handle it is going to be delayed. So
yeah, that's a tough one, and so I think if it's anything more than just a bump or bruise or scrape, he's going to get pulled.
Yeah, and that's very possible. I mean, I'm sure that the Leafs have to have some say in this. They did sign him to a 5-year, $25 million extension.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you would think that if they say, now you can't use our player.
Who's the number 2 goalie for that team?
For the Danes? Jeez, I don't even know.
I gotta look on my. All right, let me look.
Take a look, but I mean, let's just say this would be, and to tie to your point, I know that when they announced the Team North America roster, there were some people who were Leaf fans who covered the Leafs that were in a way rooting for Austin Matthews not to be picked. Because the last thing, and I hate saying this, and some Leaf fans will say, of course, because I've said it, it's going to happen. The last thing that organization wants to see is their future building block play his first game on ACC ice for Team North America and to get hurt and to delay his debut in Toronto. That's the last thing that they need.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, this is one of those things, right? I look at this whole month of camp as incredibly important for the Maple Leafs. This is the start of it. Austin Matthews it started last year, but getting Matthews is the actual true start of what they want to do.
Yes.
And in a way, it has to start out, I think, on a positive note, be it at the simplest terms, everyone being healthy. That's what you want to see, because then you can really base your analysis on what they need moving forward, what's going to work, what might not work. So yeah, and the World Cup of Hockey kind of throws a gigantic wrench in all of that. If you're the Leafs, because of the goaltending situation, because of Matthews, where his involvement's going to be. So it's a weird situation, I think, for a rebuilding team. Usually these rebuilding teams, you have your guys for the rookie tournament, you have your guys for your training camp, for your preseason, and you go from there. So this is totally different. I think it's kind of fascinating in a lot of ways, but at the same time, I could see an old school guy like Lou being sort of a little pissed off with this whole thing.
Yeah, it looks like for Team Europe, Thomas Greiss is the other goalie.
And Thomas Greiss, obviously, that's the guy that, you need to see if that's real or not, last year, I think, because I'm of the belief that it's a little flukish. That's just me. I haven't seen it in a large enough sample size. But yeah, no, there's a lot of guys involved in this tournament that I think it's good and bad. It's good for the player, bad for the team, if that makes sense in a lot of ways.
No, it does.
It's good for them to kind of prove themselves and see what they got. But at the same time, I think the teams want to know what they have too.
Russ, not that I think that the management of the Leafs is subject to media pressure, because I don't think that they are. They're going to do what they think is best. But I think the fact that they were able to get Matthews, that they won the lottery, that they drafted Matthews, in a way is going to give them a little bit of cover if they decide to send Marner back to London. Because if they had picked fourth overall, picked, say, Matthew Tkachuk is probably going back to London, but maybe not. But there would be more of a focus of, okay, your 2015 pick won all these MVPs, did everything he possibly could do in junior. He's got to make the Leafs.
That's how it would have been in the past, but Lou doesn't care about that. Shanahan will probably follow suit with that. And so, yeah, if they get Matthews and Nylander to start the year there, fine.
Right. Okay, well, let's move on. There was an announcement this morning, and we'll bring up the name of Jimmy Vesey just one more time, because apparently Jeff Gorton, the Rangers general manager, gave a lot of credit to Chris Drury in regards to attracting Vesey to come to the Rangers. Drury, former Hobey Baker winner, just like Vesey, won the Calder Trophy with the Colorado Avalanche, won a cup with the Avalanche, was with the Sabres and the Rangers. He was the Rangers director of player development, now has been promoted to assistant GM. Russ, it looks like, Drury, like a lot of ex-players like Yzerman and like Joe Sakic, is on that track to be an NHL general manager.
Yeah, like I said the other day, I mean, he's a guy that's well thought of. Ranger fans liked him to the very end, even though he wasn't living up to his contract. They knew it wasn't his fault, and he always gave max effort. He must have made a good pitch, get it? Little League World Series, Chris Drury, there you go, to Jimmy Vesey. Yeah, Ty's too young for that, but it's all right. And it's a good spot for him. It's interesting, though, that he's been able to work up the ladder in the Rangers organization, and Mark Messier is nowhere near the Rangers organization and could have had a chance to sort of work up the ladder, but didn't go that route, right? So now, really, Chris Drury is very close to that next possible promotion. He's in the spot that Jeff Gorton used to be in, and he's done it I want to say the right way. I'm not saying Messier did it the wrong way, but the way Messier wanted to do it didn't work out, and now he's not in either one of those tight positions for the Oilers or the Rangers. So you got to give Drury credit.
I mean, what is Messier? I mean, is he basically right now just a
consultant, I think, for Edmonton? That's it.
Yeah. No, I mean, we do have a former player in Don Sweeney as the GM in Boston. I'm not connecting Boston here and Drury. It just Drury is a New England native. He's on a positive track towards probably being a GM within 2 to 3 seasons. I mean,
actually, he's an advisor.
He's an advisor. Okay.
There you
go. But I'm just switching to the Bruins here for a second, Ty. I mean, Don Sweeney has made some good moves, some very questionable moves.
Yeah.
How long is his rope in Boston?
Well, I think any GM needs 3 years. I think 3 years is because by the third year, the guy you took in the first round in your first year is knocking on your NHL door, and I think that's how long it takes you out of bad contracts, to trade some guys, to really put your official stamp on a team. So I think Sweeney would need 3 years. I do wonder, though, if you miss the playoffs this year, that's 3 years in a row that the Bruins have missed the playoffs, one under Shirley, both under Sweeney. And that'd be a problem, I think, for this front office. Really, the message this offseason was fix it or else, which is, it's a dangerous message to send, because with the GM who loves development as much as Don Sweeney does, you sort of need to have that patience. You need to have that willingness to go through the bumps in the road. But the Bruins can't really afford that right now. They're in dark danger of being the fourth most popular team in town, because the Patriots are always going to be the Patriots as long as Tom Brady and Bill Belichick are in town. The Red Sox are always going to be the Red Sox. The Celtics have been good. The Bruins need to keep up with these teams, or they will fall back into what they were in 2006, 2007, which is way down, not even being talked about in town. And that affects everything else. So, and there was a recent survey that found that asked 14,000 Boston sports fans, and the team they trust the least was the Boston Bruins, which is absolutely the New England Revolution had a higher rating in terms of ownership trust and general management trust than the Boston Bruins.
Now,
Terrifying.
Does that come from the point where Jeremy Jacobs, it seems to be pretty demanding and puts this much pressure on his guys?
Yes, it comes from that, and I think the past. So many people are jaded by the Tyler Seguin trade, where there are these worries now that they're going to trade Pasternak for peanuts, they're going to trade Spooner for peanuts. People wonder what the direction is.
When that trade was being made, that it wasn't Chiarelli spearheading that. Everybody knew that.
Yeah, no, exactly, and. But it's left a lingering taste in everyone's mouth for about 3 years now about what the direction is in this front office, where they're going. So the Bruins really have to kind of win back their fans' trust in a lot of ways, and that does start with Sweeney.
But what about – here's the funny thing, okay? I don't want to say that Don Sweeney should be absolved from all this, but it seems like Cam Neely has an undue amount of power there and persuasion.
Yeah, I mean – he does and he doesn't. There are certain things I think when it comes to Sweeney and Neely, there's more of a Neely trusts Sweeney than Neely trusted Chiarelli, if that makes sense. He kind of lets Don do the hockey ops department, and Neely is the bigger picture sort of guy in charge there.
But is Cam Neely in the same kind of trouble that Don Sweeney would be in if they didn't make the playoffs?
I think Neely would be in more trouble.
Okay.
Because Neely would have 3 consecutive playoff misses to his name, whereas Sweeney, though he was part of the front office, that Chiarelli's final year, he wasn't the GM.
Yeah, and we're not talking about them missing the playoffs by leaps and bounds. They lost out in the last week of the season 2 years in a row, and
yeah.
I mean, that sort of speaks to, and I don't consider it a desperation move, but maybe a questionable move of signing Backus, who's 32 years old, to a 5-year deal, giving him $6 million a year. I mean, this is a team that the core that is remaining from that 2011 Stanley Cup winning team. I mean, Krejci continues to break down injury-wise. Chara is close to 40 years old. Bergeron is great, but he can't do it by himself. And Marchand is 1 year away from being a UFA.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of question marks right now with that organization. So, I mean, this if they make the playoffs, maybe it things stay status quo. But if they miss again, I think you could see a house cleaning. And by the way, I think the only 2 people that are probably happy that Kevin Durant didn't sign with the Celtics are Charlie and Jeremy Jacobs.
Here's the thing. One thing though, Ty. The Red Sox had their first revolution with the Bill James advanced stats. It doesn't seem like the Bruins are going that route, or at least I don't hear about it publicly.
Yeah, they keep their stuff like that a little under wraps. I can tell you they do have guys that do their advanced metrics. They actually kind of have their own system of sorts. They pay attention to the advanced analytics and things like that, the advanced stats, analytics rather. But they sort of have their own group and their own guy they trust to do that, who's actually a part of their scouting department as well.
Has he been a part of the regime for the last 2 years that hasn't made the playoffs?
It's been a transition of sorts for a lot of these guys. But what I will say though is Don Sweeney is very aware, if you will, of certain things such as zone, the zone time, the shot suppression, things like that. So some of the, the other mentioned sort of advanced stats beyond Corsi and Fenwick, things like that. That's a huge reason why they picked up John Michael Lyles, was they looked at his advanced metrics and they thought this was a player that could really help them with that first pass out of the defensive zone, things like that. So, and they look at him as a cheap upgrade over a guy like Dennis Seidenberg, which in a lot of ways makes sense, I think, for them. So Dennis Seidenberg, of course, has some of the worst advanced metrics in the entire league. So for me, that's the realization that they need to change. They need to shift. You can have older players, you can have veterans, but they have to still be capable NHL players. So
one more question for you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Go ahead.
How come there's never been a rivalry between Boston clam chowder and Manhattan clam chowder? I mean, the Yankees and Red Sox hate each other. Why hasn't there been a battle of the chowders?
Well, it's because New England clam chowder is entirely better, and it's not even close. It's just I mean, come on, that's like.
Then why did they even invent Manhattan clam chowder? Why'd they bother?
I think to waste everyone's time. You got to give them the option too, and it's like.
I don't like either one of them, so.
I do not like either one of them. What is wrong with you?
I don't trust.
I don't like clams. I don't like clams.
I don't trust any person that's from New England and doesn't like seafood. I know you're not from New England, but if I meet someone from here like, oh, I hate seafood, I'm like, you're an animal. Just go away.
I like seafood. I just don't like clam chowder or clams.
Yeah.
No, one actual non-food question for you, Ty. Is Claude in danger? Because I mean,
yes.
the situation here, you would think that if they start out badly, that the first sacrificial lamb would be Claude Julien. But if everybody's in trouble, it might be one of these situations where they don't want a general manager who's on an uneven footing to hire a new coach, that they would all have to go at the same time.
Yeah, I think if you were going to do the order of things, who's in most danger, if there's a bad start, if it's a bad year, it would be Claude, number one. Number two would be the team president, in my opinion. Number three would be Don Sweeney. I think that's sort of and then four, I would put the players, because I think that they still believe in a guy like Bergeron. They still believe in a Krejci and a Marchand, and rightfully so. I think when Krejci's healthy, he's one of the best playmakers in the league. The problem is that he's not healthy. That's been the big problem. So I don't think they blame the players as much as they would blame the coach or the front office. So if this team does start out 3-7, 4-12, something like that, I do think you're going to see Claude get the quick axe, and I think you would see Butch Cassidy, their assistant coach now. He was the coach of the Providence Bruins for about 4 seasons. Now he's with the team as an assistant. I think you would see him promoted because they have a track record here of these young guys coming up from Providence and being more finely tuned players and capable of playing their game. So
he's a former NHL coach, isn't he?
Yes, he used to coach the Capitals, and the Capitals hated him. So that's the only thing. There was a huge issue where Cassidy, this was years ago now, but Cassidy, I think, called the players losers. He said, we played like losers. We do this. It was similar to what Mike Camilleri said about the Canadiens. It was around Christmas. It was this whole big thing. And I remember the players in Washington absolutely hated Butch Cassidy. This was 03-04, but, since then, he'll be the first to tell you he's learned a lot about coaching and what it takes to push the right buttons. So that's the guy that I think, he's on the bench now. He's lurking over Claude. And I think that's it has to be a real concern, I think, for Claude Julien. But listen, if the team responds the way that they should, and the players still believe in Claude, every player I talk to still believes in what the message Claude Julien has given to the team. The problem is that over the course of an 82-game season, it's hard to show it. It's hard to go balls to the wall every single night when you're an aging team, when you're a team that has difficulty sort of developing their identity. The Bruins did not have identity last year at all. They were just this sort of mix and match group of players that you had gritty guys and you had skill guys, and how do you make it all work? Very, very weird year last year in Boston, and I think they struggled with that identity crisis, and they struggled grasping the concepts that they had from their coach. I look at this roster this year. I think this is a smarter group. I think this is a group that has more.
Zach Ronaldo, but anyhow,
he is. I think you'll never see him in here. You'll never see him here again.
But when you said smart, I had to mention Ronaldo.
Well, well, I can't. I'm not going to name names here, but you bring in a Backus, you bring in a Dominic Moore. These are guys that are going to be that lead by example type of talent. So that's definitely a focus for the Bruins.
Yeah, that's addition by subtraction, Russ. But I mean, basically, I mean, the Bruins are in a position right now. I mean, just looking at what the Eastern Conference may be upcoming, and things can change with one injury. But it looks like I would say Tampa and Florida are going to be locks for the two of the top 3 spots in the Atlantic Division, and that means Montreal, Detroit, and Boston. Maybe an outside chance of Buffalo if they improve enough.
I'm not making Florida a lock yet.
Okay.
I'm not.
That's crazy talk. That might be the best defense in the league.
It's not great. It may be the best defense, but it's a brand new defense, so we'll see.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the injury portion of the program, because Elliot Friedman reported this morning, and there's been other indications throughout the morning regarding the status of Jeff Carter for the upcoming World Cup of Hockey. Team Canada apparently is getting together on Sunday, and Carter's status is in question because of an injury, lower body injury that occurred during training. So on top of Jamie Benn, on top of Zetterberg for Sweden, this is another person that could be.
This is why Team North America, no injuries. I'm telling you, the youth.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
They're gonna have a chance.
But I mean, yes, Canada has a backlog of talent. If Carter drops out, they have somebody else who will be as good. But I mean, I think this sort of takes away from this tournament because I mean, you can never prevent injuries. They are going to happen. They're a fact of life. But I mean, if Carter and Ben are gone, those are two guys who, I think Carter would have factored in on the wing. Those are two power wingers that Canada will be without, Ty.
I mean, go ahead, Ty, sorry.
No, it's okay. What I think this would do, too, in a lot of ways, and maybe this isn't like a make or break kind of thing, but it does take two players from southern markets and West Coast markets out of the games, which would, I think, maybe would affect viewership in LA. I know you have Drew Doughty and you have Tyler Seguin still, but I think that is a little bit concerning if you're the NHL. If your guys from your California teams and your Texas team, if they're not playing, less eyes from those states, which is, I think, a big reason why this tournament's on ESPN in the first place, is to attract more American hockey viewers. We talked about this yesterday. You look at their ad campaign centered around American players. I think they want to get, and if you have players from U.S. teams, even though they're playing on Team Canada, the American fan is going to watch that team. So I do think that that's a big blow in that sense, and that's something maybe we're not paying close enough attention to. But I kind of go with what you said, Mike, where there's no shortage of talent. There's no shortage of guys to call if you're Team Canada and say, hey, do you want to come play for us? Taylor Hall, right? Is he even on a team right now? Wouldn't that be a guy that you would call?
Sure.
That's just one of 10 guys you can think of top of your head that they could call to step in, and it wouldn't be a major difference in terms of talent.
Well, Russ, they're not
down to like Shemp or Zeppo March yet.
Well, no. Or Joe. Remember Joe as the three? But we mentioned when Ben bowed out that it was conspicuous that Corey Perry was not added. Now it'll be interesting if Carter is now, if he goes by the wayside, that they don't choose Perry. And it's funny because Perry played at the World Hockey Championships, and the most prominent thing that he did was almost submarine and undercut Patrick Laine. And he's got that reputation, and normally that wouldn't be any kind of a big deal, but I get the impression that if he's continually being snubbed, that kind of play is something that they don't want.
Maybe Babcock doesn't want him, yeah.
Yeah, so on the other injury news, not tied to a particular player, sure. Dr. Vincent Lacroix, who is the team doctor for the Montreal Canadiens, is no longer being employed by the team, according to Renaud Lavoie from TVA Sports. The statement says that there is no connection between the renewal of his contract or his dismissal and the lingering injuries and the decisions regarding goaltender Carey Price. Yes, I have a bridge in Brooklyn to sell to you, Mr. Anderson. How much will you pay me for it?
I love when this happens. I love when there's a team that has a major injury issue, and the team doctor gets dismissed. Like, it's not related. No, your star player being shelled for 9 months, nothing to do with it. No, clearly that's what it is for Montreal, and I think the Red Sox had this problem with their team doctor during the whole Schilling issue. I believe it was with his ankle, and then later his political beliefs. His Twitter account, and whatnot. No, but yeah, that has to be tied to that, and you do wonder. I think you look at Montreal, wonder what the hell is going on up there, because this team they are still one more Carey Price injury away from being a complete bottom-dwelling basement team. Nothing they did this summer made sense. They trade PK Subban because of character issues. Then they signed Alexander Radulov, a known saint in the locker room. Makes no sense. Nothing they do makes any sense to anybody. They trade Subban for an older defenseman who, if you look at the metrics, you look at the advanced stats, is starting to fall very quickly. This makes sense, though. So this is the first thing they've done. Congrats. Took you till September 2nd to do something that made sense. Good job. Good job, guys.
To me, the first rule of PR is don't include in the first sentence what you don't want everybody to believe is the big factor in whatever situation you're talking about. If I would have written that PR, I would never have included that sentence. I would have just been like, hey, we've parted ways with the team doctor and left it like that.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it was in. I don't know if it was in the press release. It was in the by Renaud Lavoie. But by it being mentioned, it just makes me think. Oh no, it had nothing. It's like Kevin Long was dismissed as the hitting coach of the New York Yankees. We love him, but the fact that the Yankees stopped hitting home runs, that has nothing to do with it. No, of course it has something to do with it. So,
although conversely, the Mets hit a lot of home runs, but whatever. Kevin Long is still good.
I know, but just like unless this doctor, and I have no reason to say this, unless he committed medical malpractice, which I don't think is the case.
Just a victim of circumstance.
Exactly. But anyway, so there was a signing yesterday after the show ended, and we've mentioned Zemgus Girgensons a few times as a particular player who hasn't really fit with Dan Bilesma with the Sabres. Now I looked up, he had 2 pretty good years under Ted Nolan in Buffalo. As a 19 and 20-year-old, scored 22 and then 30 points, 15 goals in his second season, and all of a sudden under Dan Bilesma, with his role changed a little bit, probably because O'Reilly came in and Reinhart and obviously Jack Eichel. He went down to 7 goals and 11 assists last year. The Sabres have re-signed Girgensons for a 1-year deal, not a 2-year bridge deal, but a 1-year deal at $1.15 million. Ty, you've seen Girgensons play. I've seen Girgensons play. I think he's a good young player. I think right now he's sort of a victim of circumstance. And almost to me, I think that he signed a 1-year deal because he doesn't want to go to the KHL, and he wants to stay in the NHL. But I think he knows that his future might not be in Buffalo, but he's trying to make the best of the situation.
Yeah, doesn't it feel a little bit like a guy like Brett Connolly in Tampa Bay, where they have too many players playing that position. He's bogged down into a role that maybe one line below him, and this is what you're going to get. Is there a trade that gives him a better opportunity? Probably, but he's not going to just get that right now. So I think this 1-year deal is sort of that way of saying, hey, we think you can still play with us, but if you can't, we're going to deal you at the deadline, and we'll get something for you, and we'll go from there. Which is what I think you saw with Tampa Bay with Brett Connolly. Granted, they traded him to make the cap space for a bigger move, which was bringing in Braden Coburn when they did that. But still, it was sort of one of those things where that 1-year flexibility, that 1-year deal gave him that flexibility to move him with ease, really, I thought, and allow him to get that true fresh start somewhere where a team doesn't have to take on that contract if he does struggle this year. So I do think that it makes sense for Buffalo. I look at him, I think there are times where he does really shine. He'll be the best player on the ice, but then it kind of disappears. You don't see it as often as you did when he was playing for Ted Nolan. Ted Nolan, he's one of maybe 3 or 4 guys that the Sabres had that played well under Nolan, I thought. That team, obviously that was by design. They weren't a strong team, but he was a player that was a real standout for Ted Nolan. So you do know the skill is there, the talent is there. It's just a matter of usage. And you talked about O'Reilly, you talked about Reinhart. It doesn't get any easier for him now. They brought in Okposo. They have more guys who are going to probably integrate into the system this year in top 6 roles, top 9 roles. So finding the fit for him is very tough, I find. And I do think that ultimately a change is needed for him. What about you, Russ?
Yeah, I don't know why he's all of a sudden odd man out. Yes, he didn't have a great year last year, but again, pretty good player, good all around. It's hard to find good all around players. He's not going to be a 30-goal guy, but he certainly could put in 15 to 18 a season. And again, 1.15 million definitely lends himself to being traded. I mean, that's like we'll give you a little bit more because you're one of our guys, but you're probably not going to be one of our guys for very long.
Right.
And so, I feel bad for the kid because I really do think he's a good player. There was a drop off in everybody's game last year in Buffalo. It wasn't, other than Eichel, everybody was pretty off. I mean, you can go down the list and see.
Matt Molson's vanished.
Matt Molson's vanished. Evander Kane, Tyler Ennis, host of reasons and whatever, but everybody was off. Just seems like he's just not getting a fair break there.
Yeah, I mean, I know that there was some talk that a guy like Johan Larsson became more in favor because he could do what Gergensons did and is a cheaper, a more cost-effective player.
I mean, but they're a budget team anyhow. Like, they're not spending to the top of the cap. So
yeah,
and clearly Pagula won't keep him under a budget forever. He'll spend to the top of the cap at some point. So what's the difference on who? That shouldn't be a reason as to why he's not getting playing time.
Well, yeah, I
not in favor, I should say.
Granted, but you and we've said this before about the Sabres. I mean, there is so much that still needs to be moved out and moved past with that team, with Gianta with another year left in his contract, with Josh Georges, with Cody Franzen, with the albatross of a deal that Zach Bogosian has, with Matt Molson 3 more years at I think it's $5.25 million, with Evander Kane and all of his off the ice problem. I mean, there are so many things, and it sort of obfuscates the positives of O'Reilly, of Reinhart and Eichel. I mean, that's where I think like Toronto is sort of ahead of where Buffalo was last year because they have their house in much better order than Buffalo still does. But I mean, I think there's a lot of potential there, and I think
here's an example. Okay, what did Marcus Foligno do to earn his $2.25 million? He had 23 points. He had 10 goals. I think they expected a lot more out of him. Yes.
He improved after the McGinn trade because they gave him more ice time, and he's a big. He's got speed, he's got size, he's got a nasty disposition, and I think that he started to play the way he can play later in the year. But he was caught in that numbers game along with Gergensons at the beginning of the season, and they were giving more ice time to the veterans, trying to get them going. And obviously Bilesma is going to have.
That's my point. I guess that's my point. Is the Sabres again are this team where Pagula spent some money a couple of years ago. Those guys are still on the roster with these young players, and now it's affecting some of these young players. You're probably not making the playoffs this year.
Right.
Why not give these young players the big roles they deserve to see what you have? You already know what Gianta is. You already know what Molson is. You already know what these guys are.
Go ahead,
it feels like there's an issue with Bilesma in the sense that in Pittsburgh he had trouble trusting some of the young guys too, despite some of their higher ceilings. I think Bo Bennett comes to mind as a player that I thought never necessarily got the extended look that he should have based on the way he would play at certain points. So. And the list goes on, I think, too, with Pittsburgh players. There's probably a few more that I'm missing that never quite got the fair shake under Bilesma. So maybe it's similar to where once you're in the doghouse, it's very tough to fight out of it, especially with the amount of veterans that they have on their team and the guys that have that track record. Even it was 6 years ago now. He trusts them naturally a little bit more than he would the kid who, is only has 3 years in the league and last year was not his best year, and I think it's a tough position to fight out of if you're a kid. I mean, I do come back to Boston on this with Ryan Spooner, where the first 30 games of his career, you didn't really see anything. And then you gave him a top 6 role when David Krejci went down, and he really performed very, very well. And he parlayed that into a very successful season last year, 13 goals, 49 points. And now even this year, he's going to have to, again, fight to prove his worth because they brought in Backes. They view Backes as a third-line center. I would personally put Backes on the right wing with Bergeron and Marchand. You might have the best two-way line in all of hockey if you did that. But it's clear that they're putting the pressure on Spooner once again to say, hey, out-battle this guy. Prove your worth. Right. And that's going to be – it's difficult when you do that to a young kid, I think, especially if you're a team like Buffalo, a team that a lot of people expect to sort of battle for a playoff spot this year, given how bad they've been these past 3 to 4 seasons, since 2010, actually, probably in terms of 2011. In terms of their hunt to be a playoff team. If this kid doesn't succeed right away, he's going to get buried. And
you know what? And here's the worst part. Sorry, here's the worst part. They never send a message publicly to Evander Kane like, watch it or it's going to affect your ice time. They never send a message to any of these veterans like, hey, if you don't earn your keep, these young kids are going to take your ice time. So these guys get to pretty much walk in and never have to worry about their job on the ice.
Well, I think there's an agenda there with Kane regarding his ice time, Russ, because they can't deny Evander Kane ice time because I think they need to make sure that he scores goals and plays better this year so they can move him. Because right now, if you put him on the third line and he's scoring 12 goals a year and he's making $5.25 million, you're eating the rest of that contract. If he scores close to 30, which he's got the capability to do, he's got the talent to do, then he might be picked up in expansion next summer, or he might be able to be traded at the deadline and them to get rid of his contract because of all the stuff that's going on. I'm convinced that that organization is ready to move on from Evander Kane, and it's just a question of when and how. It's either buyout or it's expansion or it's trade, but I don't think.
So Matt Molson, why does he continue to get ice time at all?
Well, I think Matt Molson was around last year. Matt Molson, he was the guy who Jack Eichel stayed with as an 18-year-old. He's a veteran guy, a team leader type of guy, but at a certain point, his lack of speed and his inability, I think, I don't remember how many goals he scored at the end of the last year, but for most of the year he had 1. And then he may have scored a few at the end of the year. But he was a liability on
up to 8 goals and 13 assists.
Yeah, okay, so he got hot at the end of the year. But, this is a $5 million player, and he's nowhere close to being that.
He get ice time. He should be a role player.
Yeah, but
it's tough to lodge a $5 million player into a role player slot.
Yeah, but at some point you have to do what's best for the franchise, getting better, moving forward. It's not like you're going to get playing.
Was that a Murray signing, or
that was a Murray signing after he had traded Molson to Minnesota for a second-round pick. He re-signed him.
Yeah.
For 5 years at I think it was $5 million. So, okay, now. Along with Gergensen's signing lowers the amount of restricted free agents who are still without a contract from 16 to 15. I'm not going to go through all 15 of them, but there are 8 players who we've mentioned at times over the last month or so that are still unsigned. We'll play a little game here to end the show. We'll call it bridge, long-term, or holdout, because right now you're talking 2 weeks from training camp, 2+ weeks from training camp, and none of these guys are signed. So the question is, and we saw Cody Ceci last week with Ottawa sign a 2-year bridge deal for, decent money, but maybe he was one of those guys who was hoping to get the long-term deal and settled for the bridge deal. Well, there are defensemen out there who are, I think, more talented than Ceci, who I don't think will take the bridge deal. But let's go through the list of 8 players that I have here. First one is Dmitry Orlov from the Capitals. Now, he's coming off a bridge deal. He was making $2 million a year, scored 29 points last year. And from the comments being made by Barry Trotz, he's projected to be in a top 4 role there, but he's still unsigned. Russ, do you think he gets another bridge deal or the long-term deal, or he holds out?
No, I would try and get him on a 3-4 year deal. I think that's fair. 29 points in this league is nothing to sneeze at. He's got size. He does have speed. I like Dmitry Orlov, and I don't know why it's dragged on like this.
So you think in the end it's going to end up being a long-term deal?
Yeah, but not like 5 or 7. Like, he's probably looking for 5 or 7, and I think he'll get 3 and maybe an option for a 4th, something like that.
Ty?
Yeah, I would say 4 years, maybe, $18.5 million. That seems to be the going rate if you're a number 3 or number 4 defenseman in this league. He's not going to get 5. I don't think that. But if you were to do a 3 or 4 at 4.5 to 4.75 per, it's not bad if you're Orlov and the Caps for that matter.
Yeah, I think that's dead on. I think he's going to end up getting more than the guys like Larson and Clefbaum, who they signed long-term deals. They got over 4. He's not going to get as much as a Torrey Krug or
Right.
or
Yeah.
Tyson Berry. So I think he'll be in between. So I think it'll be 4.5, 4.75 for 4 years. So we all said long-term. Going back to the Sabres, Rasmus Ristolainen, who came out earlier this week and said that he really hasn't talked to the Sabres that much and doesn't expect to sign the deal with them until after the World Cup. Well, after the World Cup is the first week of October.
Hmm.
And that, I mean, that's, to me, for if you're the Sabres, I think that sets off warning bells, because this is your number one linchpin franchise cornerstone defenseman. You need to get him locked up. I'll go first. I think there's a potential for a holdout here if they don't give him the long-term deal, but I think in the end they're stupid if they don't sign him to a 6 or 7 year deal. And I think that's what it'll end up being. Ty, what do you think?
Yeah, I would say, it may drag on to a holdout, but I think 6 years, 30 to 36, around there. I mean, that would make sense, because that's what these guys cost, and Buffalo doesn't necessarily have a ton of backup options in their pipeline when it comes to replacing him. So I think that would make the most sense, and ultimately that's what they're going to have to do. And it's not as if they can't do it. It's not like there's a log jam, I think, of guys that you wouldn't consider buying out or trading to a cap floor team if you absolutely have to. So yeah, I think, yeah, he's an idiot. It's unbelievable. Get out of here, will you? Jeez Louise. But yeah, so I say long term there.
Okay, we need Kaya to step in the room right now, Russ.
I know. She's
Ristolainen, do you think it's going to end up being...
on an audio show I did earlier. She got her words in. Ristolainen had 41 points. He is 21 years old. I would walk up to him before the World Cup and give him 8 years and $40 million and try and get his name and the ink signed and let it be dry, because I just don't understand why you would wait with a guy like this. I get that you're still in control as the team,
right,
but this is where Pegula doesn't need to pinch pennies. This is where he needs to get this guy locked up long term.
Right, and this is where Tim Murray's got to get his financial house in order. This is where, like, after this year, Gianta, his contract is gone. You've got Cody Franzen's contract is over with. I think you eclipse one more year of the George's deal, and there's money dropping off, and it makes sense to give that money to a guy who I think is your number one defenseman for the next decade. Okay, and we've talked about this guy, and he's in a similar situation to Gergensen's in Buffalo, Valery Nikushkin with the Dallas Stars. He coming off his ELC, he had a good rookie year, injured his second year. Last year he only had 29 points, 9 goals. I think he was misused by Lindy Ruff. He was only played part-time during the playoffs. I think he's one of these guys, Ty, where, like you were saying, a young guy who's got to play in the top 6 to benefit him, and he's got all the talent, but they don't seem to see him that way. I think he's being blocked by guys like Patrick Sharp, who is a sort of a short-term guy with the Stars. I think he ends up probably signing the bridge deal, but I would be surprised if he ends up completing that bridge deal in Dallas. I think he's going to, like Gergensen's, is going to end up being traded.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's a bridge deal for him, because you can't, if you're his camp, as much as you'd like to, you can't say, hey, bring in the Brinks truck after 29 points and an injury. You have to build that worth back up, it seems. So I do think it's a bridge deal for him, but this guy's annoying me so badly right now. No, but like you said, I would be very surprised if he were to finish that deal. I think in Dallas, you look at Dallas, they're still thinking short term here. They're still thinking cup window. And Nikushkin could be a big piece that gets them another defenseman or just another forward they think might be of more help to them. You don't sign Erie Hoodler, and you don't keep Patrick Sharp, and sign Dan Hamhuis unless you think you can win it this year or the next 2 years. So I think this might be the year Dallas loads up, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Nikushkin as that big trade chip to make that happen.
Russ?
He's getting a 1-year deal. I would give him more, but his coach doesn't really seem like he wants to play him. So, or at least he did. He played him in a lot of games. I shouldn't say that. He doesn't want to give him a lot of ice time.
Right.
That's the issue. He didn't get a lot of ice time. And so if you don't give him a lot of ice time and don't put him with the right guys, don't give him power play time, you might as well just sign him to a 1-year deal and trade him at some point because that's where you head.
Johnny Gaudreau. Now we know Sean Monahan signed that long-term deal with Calgary. They got the center out of the way. Gaudreau is still unsigned. He's going to play in the World Cup. Last 2 years combined 54 goals, 24 and 30. I mean, an immense talent. I think he's looking for the long-term deal. I would be surprised if he took the short-term. I think he's going to get something very similar to Monahan. I'm just surprised they didn't sign them both at the same time. So I think eventually it's going to be long-term, but I don't know if I see a holdout here. I think they'll get it done. Russ, what do you think on Gaudreau?
I will give Gaudreau, since Monahan got 7 and 44, I will give him 7 and 42.
$6 million.
Yeah, I was gonna say do the Kane and Taves, give him matching contracts. That's
I can't do that because I think because of the size of Monahan, he might be a little more durable. But I'm willing to roll the dice on Johnny now at this point.
Yeah, but I think at the same time, if the body holds up in the sense of he takes care of himself, which I think he has, and he's tried to take care of himself further, adding size, adding muscle when he can. Yeah. I think the rest will take care of itself, similar to like a Marty St. Louis type. So that's a guy, and the league is sort of trending towards these guys in a lot of ways now. This quicker speed, you don't really necessarily need to be built like a professional wrestler to find success in this league now. So
for Monahan's center too, that's the other thing. You pay the center, the bigger center, a little more.
But it's very tough to find that dynamic scorer on the wing. Sure. I mean, it's very tough to find that guy that can score in a variety of ways. I think what Gaudreau does, which is makes him different from a lot of guys, is that he scores from all areas of the ice, all different ways. He's a sneakily good guy around the net, and that's one of the things that you don't think of when you think of a guy that's 5'7", 150 pounds. You don't think of a guy that's good around the front of the net, but he actually has a nice nose for the net. He knows where he's going. He knows how to make plays happen. So even though the center has more responsibilities, I think the variety of ways that Gaudreau can burn the other team makes him quite valuable to the Flames.
Yeah, his quick cutting, tight turning ability, really suits that, what you were saying, getting to the net. Jacob Trouba, this continues to go on. I think the battle here is obviously that Winnipeg wants to give him the bridge deal. He wants what Morgan Riley and other younger defensemen, Dougie Hamilton, got. I don't know whether he's going to get the 6 or 7 year deal from Winnipeg. That's why I still think there's a possibility of a trade. But I think wherever he signs, it's going to be the long-term deal. I would be shocked unless he's overpaid on a short-term bridge deal, meaning like if he's given $4.5 or $5 million on a 2-year deal. I think it's going to be the long-term deal. Russ, what do you think?
I don't know. I'm looking at his numbers from last year. Let me see what he.
21 points. He averages over his 3 years. He's averaged 24 points, 29, 22, and 21.
He's got 43 points in 82 games, and that team was a tire fire last year. I'd probably go 6 years and give him 6 years just under 30, like 28 and a half, something like that, and see if we can get him in for that. Because I think most years he's going to get you around 30 points. When the team's better, he's at least a 30-point guy, and I think you could go with that. And he's got good speed, moves the puck, so all those things too.
Do you think the comparative is Hamonic? Because I think some people think he's better offensively.
A little more offensive than Hamonic, but he's a close comparable to that. Yeah.
Ty?
I think long term, but I think trade. I don't think it happens in Winnipeg. I don't. You look at their roster. It's tough to see where he slots in as a top pairing guy. So I just think it's not going to happen in Winnipeg. I mean, this has sort of been brewing for what feels like 2 years, a year and a half, 2 years. I just don't think it happens with the Jets.
Okay. 3 more names quickly. Ricard Raquel, RFA with the Anaheim Ducks. After a second year, which was okay, he broke through 20 goals, 23 assists with the Ducks. I think this says bridge deal because there's not a great deal of he didn't have success for multiple years. It was just a 1 year, so I think it'll end up being a 2-year bridge deal. But I'm surprised it hasn't been done yet.
Yeah, I would say bridge deal, or maybe similar to the Orlov deal where it's 3 years. So it's not quite the 1 or 2 year, but it's not quite a long term one either. The Ducks obviously have a lot of financials to work out. on their back end, you almost forget about the front end, with in regards to Raquel. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's a 3-year deal. Again, it's a sample size issue. I don't think you have a ton to work with if you're him in terms of a long-term deal. So I think at the same time, there's value in what he does and what he brings to your team. So I think you'd be smart to go more than 1 year, more than 2 years, because you might pull a Montreal with Subban and price yourself even higher. So I think 3 years would probably be the safe bet if you're the Ducks.
And if you do 3 years, you're 1 year away from UFA, so you still have arbitration and you still have the ability to sign him to an extension. Russ, what do you think?
I think he's getting the 2-year bridge deal for $5 million.
2.5 a year. Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Hampus Lindholm, also Anaheim. I mean, everybody has tied this. I know Eck has mentioned the Fowler situation going hand in hand with Lindholm, and if they trade Fowler, then Lindholm's contract is probably soon to follow. I would think that Lindholm is a guy that if you lock up Sami Vatanen on a long-term deal, you're locking up Lindholm on a long-term deal. Russ, what do you think?
I mean, if they feel like they have the finances, I don't think they're going to lock him up on this go-round. I think they're going to go like 2 years, maybe like 5.2, 5.3, something like that, maybe a little bit more than that, and that's it. I don't think, unless Fowler does get dealt, I don't think they're giving him a long-term deal. I think they're giving him a bridge deal.
I mean, it's incongruous that they would sign Vatanen for a long-term extension. I mean, BX's contract is up after this year, so I mean, it's mostly, and Fowler's got 2 more years left. Plus, they have all those young defensemen in the pipeline. You would think that, I mean, Lindholm was a top 10 pick, and he's a good defenseman. You would think that they would want to get him locked up long-term.
But he is younger than Vatanen. He's 22, and he doesn't have control, and they do have a budget, and I think they're going to stick within the budget.
Ty?
Yeah, you look at this guy. I mean, this is a guy that every team, I think, would knock down some walls to get. So if you're the Ducks, I think you have to make that decision where what's the greater return? Keeping him and trading Fowler, or keeping Fowler, relying on this pipeline to come in, and then trading Lindholm for a ransom. And obviously, I think you're going to get a greater return if you were to trade Lindholm. The problem is that can you handle that on your NHL roster?
Well, they have Theodore and they have Montour. They clearly can handle it.
Yeah.
But
I'm not saying that's the right route to go. And there's Kaya for you. That's not the right route to go, but
yeah.
Hey.
But,
yeah, well, the thing is, and every trade regarding, we'll put Lindholm into the mix here. Any trade with Anaheim of a defenseman, either Fowler or Lindholm, is going to result more than likely in a top 6 forward coming back to Anaheim. That's what they need. They need, I mean, there's been speculation about the Leafs and Fowler, and that Van Riemsdyk would be the guy going back, which would make sense because both have 2 years left in their contract. But Lindholm is a guy at 22 years old, like Morgan Riley, same draft, that you want to lock up 6-7 years. So, I would be surprised if Bob Murray if he trades Lindholm, but I've been surprised in some other things that Bob Murray has done, so it's not out of the realm of possibility.
Say the least.
Yeah, last thing, and Ty, I'll go to you first on this one since you've covered the Lightning for Hockey Buzz at times in the last year. Nikita Kucherov, I continue to say that Steve Yzerman has not done many things wrong, but if he signs him to a bridge deal, he's insane. He needs to get this guy locked up on a 5 or 6 year deal, because if you wait after 2 years based on what he's done the last 2, you're going to price yourself out. He's not going to sign a deal that makes sense financially for them. They got to get him locked up long term now. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the guy that I give 6 years, $39 million to. 6.5 per. He was the Lightning's best player last year, no doubt about it in my mind. He played in their top line at times. He played in their second line at times, but he was still the same player, making unbelievable plays, either with his shot or with his passing. He was their best player in the playoffs, I thought. This is a guy that you absolutely have to keep in the mix. They don't have a ton of scoring options on their right wing. It's mainly grit and intangible-based guys, between Callahan and JT Brown has played the right side as well often. Nemestikov's played the right side. Stamkos played the right side. They don't have a guy like Kucherov that's going to come in and just be there and replace what he does. So this guy you have to keep. You don't run the risk of signing him for even more with a bridge deal, I think. And they have the cap space to make it work. They're going to begin the year with Ryan Callahan on the long-term IRs, so they have that cap space just to be cap compliant. They still have to sign Nikita Nesterov. Obviously, that's more of a minor thing because he's probably your 6th or 7th defenseman to begin the year based on what you saw from Slater Cuckoo and sort of his development and his strides he made in season, late in the playoffs as well. So they have to make a move of sorts to get under the cap. But I mean, you got to keep Kucherov in, and I think it really does begin at $6 to $6.5 million a year.
Russ, I mean, when we've been on the webcast with Kevin, he's, and Ak has mentioned as well, the possibility of them moving Filppula out if they have to sign. This was tied to Stamkos, but now I think it's tied to Kucherov because to me, I think it's an imperative they sign him to a long-term deal. But if you have to create room, then I think a guy like Filppula, who's still got value, making over $5 million, might be the guy to move out. I don't think you can move Callahan out. I mean, first of all, he's injured, and second of all, I don't think he's worth the money that they're spending on him. And I think that's the prevailing opinion from a lot of people in the league. But what do you think in terms of the contract first that they should do?
Okay. Well, I think they should give him 6 years, $6 million, because remember there's no income tax, so I'm going to chop him down to 6.
Right.
But I think they're signing him to a bridge deal because I think they still have this impossible thing going on with Filppula and Bishop, and I don't think they're going to get it solved before the season starts. So I think he's going to get like 2 years, 6-point-something million, and he's going to have to wait his term.
Is it possible? I mean, because, Bishop drops off at the end of this year. I think they have another free agent another player who drops off as a free agent at the end of this year, that he signs a 1-year deal.
It is possible.
Yeah, I mean, because I can't see him locking himself into a deal with almost $6 million in Bishop's salary dropping off, and him not getting a healthy chunk of that. I mean, maybe he signs the bridge deal, and then next summer, when with 1 year left on the other deal, they extend him 6 years because they could do that. But this guy, I mean, he's one of the main reasons they got to the Stanley Cup final 2 years ago, and they only got to Game 7 of the conference final because of him as well. So. To me, I need to lock him up as long as possible for his.
Yeah, but they're tight on money. That's the problem.
Yeah. So, all right, guys, great show. We will be back on Tuesday with Ak and Cast of Thousands. So thank you, Ty Anderson. Thank you, Russ Cohen. I'm Michael Agello. Thanks for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.